When was the last time you checked on your personal garden? Are you watering it with care or are weeds taking over? Well, today we're talking about how to tend to your life the way you tend to a garden, intentionally, with patience and faith. So, welcome to the Dope Black Chick Podcast, the space for bold, unfiltered, and transformational conversations for Black women over 40 navigating faith, mindset, and life transitions. I'm your host, Kimberly, and I'm here to help you embrace change, cultivate peace, and step fully into your next chapter. If you're ready to let go of what no longer serves you and start growing into the woman you're meant to be, you're in the right place. So let's get into it. I want to start off by saying the garden that I am referring to here when I say tending to your garden is a metaphor for life. For me, when I pray, I talk, I let everything out. But then I go into meditation. And during meditation, I actually visualize. Now, for me, the visualization takes me to a garden. I am in the garden with my highest self and we are perusing the garden. It is full of all the things that I have planted, all the dreams, my finances, my dreams for my career, dreams for my marriage or relationships, dreams for everything have been planted in this garden. And so when I get into this garden, higher self and we walk around the garden, making sure that if there are weeds there choking out something, we get to pluck it. Like, this is how I tend to my garden. If you go in the garden, when I go in the garden and I see, lush growth, right? This is great. It means that I'm in alignment. This area has been nurtured. We've been watering it. We've been taking care of it. If I see weeds, these are usually negative thoughts, limiting beliefs, some distractions. So you have to get to those things. It's like with any other garden, you're going to need to do some work in the garden. You can't just drop seeds on the ground and expect for your garden to be lush and you to have this amazing harvest. That's just not how it works. So it is important that you give your garden sunlight and rain. That's the divine guidance, that's the inspiration, that's the emotional nourishment, right? And then you got to tend the soil. When you're trying to plant something, you got to make sure that that soil is ready, that it is fertilized. You've got to make sure that it can nourish what you're getting ready to plant. So that represents the work that we must do daily to create the life that we desire. And then how do I tend to my garden? That's everything I've just showed you there, right? But here's a way that you can tend to your own garden. Step one, you need to identify what's thriving versus what's dying. When I go into the garden, I literally see places that are overrun with weeds, like overrun with weeds. And I'm like, whoo, what's going on there? Right? And usually my highest self will guide me over there. And here's another thing: when you are meditating to the highest self, with highest self, when you are meditating with highest self, everything it's just revealed so quickly. So a lot of times when I'm in there and I see this heavily weeded area, I can go in and immediately understand that I need to pull weeds of doubt, weeds of frustration, weeds of lack, weeds of, feeling inadequate, right? Feelings of inadequacy. All of those things, you have to identify what's dying. Is that choking out? At one point, it was choking out my business. I went into the garden and the business plot was so overrun with weeds. Yes, I took some time off from my business for 2 years. And so, yeah, it reflects when I walk in this garden visualization. that plot was so overrun with weeds. And I was on my knees plucking all of these weeds of doubt, weeds of, weariness, right? Inadequacy. Like, I went from corporate, I'm back in as an entrepreneur, and now I just feel like it's just too late. I had all of these self limiting beliefs in that plot that I had to pull, right? And I remember as I was pulling these weeds, right? I remember as I was pulling these weeds, we would call it out. Like every time I pulled a weed, we pull this weed of doubt. I am pulling this weed of inadequacy. I am pulling this weed of lack. I am pulling this weed of lack of resources. Whatever it was, I would pull this an ageism, right? Because I was like, oh, I'm too old to do this now. Like, come on, I'm 45. Come on, Kim. But that's real stuff that's going on in your head. So I was pulling these weeds and naming it, calling it what is choking out your plot. And that plot was the business plot. And yes, these weeds are choking out that business. And so I had to pull those things. And then for the things that are thriving, I remember after I pulled those things and I came back to the garden the next day. Mind you, you must nurture your garden daily. So when I came into the garden the next day, I saw that area, right? That area was bountiful, it was growing, it was sprouting. And that's another thing. It's like you see it sprout. It is not going to be like this huge plant, right? What happens is, like with anything else that you would put a seed in the ground, it first takes root, then it sprouts, then it thrives, it grows, and it shoots, and it gets lush, and it gets beautiful. But you have to be there every step of the way to ensure that that happens. And that's when you come in and you identify what's thriving. I came in and I was like, oh, I see the little buds, and I was like, oh my gosh. And my highest self was like, that is all the opportunities, those seeds of opportunity that you planted. They are thriving, they are sprouting, they have taken roots, and they are thriving because you water them. Every time I would see an opportunity, I would accept that opportunity. I would say, thank you for this opportunity. And so every time I got anything that closely resembled an opportunity for me, it didn't matter if it was something that I was unsure of, if it was an opportunity and I took action on it, inspired action. Like I wouldn't say, "Oh, I'll check that out later." No. If it came to me, I was taking action on it immediately, right? And so the inspired action is watering the seed. So I was doing the watering there and nurturing it. So are you feeding your passions or are you stuck in survival mode? The question is, you have to identify what areas of my life feel nurtured, what areas of my life feel neglected. And if you can identify what's thriving and what's dying in your life, you can begin to pull the weeds of that thing. And that takes us to step 2. You pull the weeds, eliminate what's holding you back. As I said, go through it. You've identified it. So if you know that you're allowing negative thoughts, toxic people, or limiting beliefs to overtake your growth, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do? Are you going to continue to let that thing choke out your dream? Or are you going to get down on your knees and start pulling weeds? So do a mental and emotional audit of what needs to be released. Matter of fact, let's do that right now. Do a quick mental and emotional audit of what needs to be released in your life. And if you have that in your mind now, I need you to write it down. And the next time you go into meditation, get on your knees and start pulling that weed and call it by its name. Okay? So let's move on to step 3. This is good. You have to water and nourish your soul daily. Remember what I said about one day I was in there pulling weeds. The next day I came in. You have to do something every day. You have to nourish this garden. You have to water it. You've got to make sure it's getting enough sun. You just have to till the soil. You have to nurture every facet of growth in your garden. So, what does that look like, Kimberly? Well, it's self care, it's faith, it's meditation, coming to the garden, it's healthy habits. These are the things that keep your garden thriving. For me, I have a whole morning routine that starts with in depth prayer, going into the garden, a list of 42 affirmations that I repeat twice. And I do this not just every morning, I do this morning, afternoon, evening. And I'm getting myself to the point where I want to pray without ceasing. I want to do it all day long. Matter of fact, today I went to the grocery store. I was having such a great day, had so much peace, and just felt aligned, just felt like I was walking those ordered steps by God, right? And so I wanted to keep that momentum. And before I went into the grocery store, I was like, hey, God, thank you for everything today so far. It's been amazing. You've given me great opportunities, and I'm just really feeling really good. And I just thank you for that. And before I go into this store, I just ask that you come with me in the store. Help me walk around and find the things that I need and nothing more, but only the things that I need. And throw in any opportunities you want to give me for some great deals in there. I'm going to be expecting that. Any little surprises you want to give me, I'm happy to have. But I just want you to come with me in this store. I went in the store, guys, and the shopping trip was amazing. For one, I just felt like it was a vacation, like it was a I don't know, it just felt so chill, and I was in a very chill zen mode. And I did find everything that I needed. Everything I needed was on sale. And when I checked out, my total was 44.44. Okay. And I was like, I see you guys. I see you. Like 44.44. Do you know what 44.44 means? It means that you are protected and that you are guided. God is looking out for you. So it was like, yeah, I got you. And I like to stay in that zone of alignment. And so this is how you continue to water and nourish the soil daily. Find ways to do that. What can you do today to pour back into yourself? Think about it. Like, really, really think about, how am I nurturing my garden? How am I nurturing my garden? And here's the last point. You have to trust the seasons of growth. I know I talked about that earlier, but let me talk about it a little bit more. Some plants take longer to grow, right? If you are, I don't know what it is, right? I don't know what your dream is, but let's just say you have a dream of a multi-million-dollar business. I want to be cautious when I say this, because God can do in one day, 2 weeks, 3 months, what the world says takes 10 years. But just trust the seasons of growth. What I'm saying is, there is no time frame when it comes to God. There's only divine timing. And so you have to trust that God is handling everything else. Don't get caught up in the house, but you know that when you put that seed in the ground, like, there's no farmer that's going to put a seed in the ground and not expect it to go through its seasons of growth. So you have to trust the seasons of growth. Some plants, they just take longer to bloom than others. And just because you don't see the immediate results, it doesn't mean that growth isn't happening. We never see the seed taking root, but it's happening underground. Nobody sees it, right? And then you may see a little sprout. But do you know what's happening before we ever get to the sprouting part? The taking of the root. And to take root means you need to do a daily routine. Like, what are you doing every day? Are you creating a routine and allowing that trust and that belief and that faith to take root in your life? That is something that you have to get patient with creating on your journey. Are you patient with your own journey? Or are you like me, rushing your harvest? Because I've done that. And I'm being honest with y'all. I'm not going to sit up here and act like I got it all together, because this season is teaching me patience. And I told God the other day, like, thank you, because I do try to rush my harvest. I like things to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and I like it to go quickly. And I'm just realizing, like, you can't rush, don't rush this harvest, because if I rush it, I may yield 10 apples. If I let divine timing take place, I'll yield 100. You see what I'm saying? So it's like you've got to calm down. You've got to slow it down. You've got to trust the seasons of growth in your life. I'm gonna wrap this thing up. I'm gonna wrap it up because it's so good, guys. The garden, tend to your garden. Tend to your garden. And what I want to do right now as we close, what I want to do is I want to guide you guys through a short mental visualization exercise. Okay? So if you're riding on your way to work, if you're driving, you cannot close your eyes. Okay? But um, if you are at home right now listening to this, or wherever you are, you're seated, I want you to close your eyes and picture your garden. What does it look like? Get really vivid about it. Is it lush? Is it a big garden or is it a little teeny one? Tell me everything you see about that garden. What does it look like? Make a mental note of it. And then make a note of what needs your attention. What sections of your garden need immediate care? What sections have weeds encroaching upon it? May not be there yet, but you can see them coming, right? And then take another look and decide what is getting ready to bloom. Is there something in your garden that's almost ready to bloom? Take note of those things. And then take note of how you will act in your garden. How are you planning to nurture your garden? Let me remind you guys this. Your life is your garden, and no one else can tend to it but you. It's all you. So, are you tending to your garden? If this message spoke to you, take a moment to reflect. What part of your garden needs the most attention right now? I want you to send me a DM, or you can drop a comment in the podcast page, on the podcast page. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Send an email to me, dopeblackchick@gmail.com. And if you're ready to take this even deeper, you can book a one-on-one coaching session with me where we'll clear the weeds and plant new seeds for growth. Let's cultivate your next chapter together. Make sure you're subscribed to the Dope Black Chick podcast so you never miss an episode. And if this resonated, share it with another dope Black woman who needs to hear it. Until next time, tend to your garden and keep growing, sis. Peace and blessings.